This crowd rises to its feet. Okoro slammed it home. Garland left wing, free ball. Perfect. Garland one of the lane, lobbed to Mobley. Pow! And Allen blocked the shot at the rim. Pow! With the left hand and a foul.
Welcome to the Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. The Chase Down is presented by Fubo, the official streaming partner of the Cavs. Watch over 350 channels of live sports and TV, including FanDuel Sports Network without cable. There's no cost and no commitment. Try for free at FuboTV.com/Cavs. The Cleveland Cavaliers have won their 14th consecutive game with a comfortable win over the Milwaukee Bucks. A good test for them. One of the few teams that they're still measuring themselves up against, a potential second round matchup for them, and they got the win in Milwaukee. Joining me today to discuss that and the upcoming stretch is my co-host Carter Rodriguez. Carter, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. It's one of the first really lovely days of the burgeoning spring in Columbus, Ohio. Kids were out without their coats on, playing with the bubble machine, going down the slide. It was absolutely wonderful. I'm sipping on a Mystic Mama from Jackie O's. I'm in a great mood. And the Cavs certainly have done nothing to hurt that. 14 wins in a row. And it felt to me, Justin, I don't know if the matchup mattered as much as their approach to the matchup mattered. I think they've proven everything they probably want to prove against the Bucks in the first couple games of the year. But we joked on our last podcast that amid a 13-game win streak, were they slumping a little? And I felt like this game really was a demonstration of what a focused Cavs team can do, even when they're not playing that well. Because I thought they outplayed the Milwaukee Bucks for 48 minutes last night.
Do you feel that they didn't play that well last night, or they didn't shoot that well?
Yeah, that's what I meant. I meant even when things aren't firing on all cylinders, like their attention to detail and their system and their connectedness, all those things were going for them. And even when they're not shooting particularly well, they're still just better. I thought Giannis brought an A game, and he probably had 6 dunks through 2.5 quarters. And I jumped onto the Fear of the Sword playback live stream just to kind of react to the game in real time with Tony Pesta, talking about, oh man, Giannis is having a great game. And then all of a sudden I look at the box score and it's like 26 points on 20 shots.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not that good. They really trusted their own process in this game, and it made it. They just kind of ground Milwaukee down to a dust until then Jarrett kind of puts the finishing touch with that poster on Brook Lopez, and it's just a walk away victory. Even when Donovan goes 4 of 15, Darius goes 4 of 13, a combined 2 of 15 from 3 from those guys, and it just didn't really matter.
Yeah, it's really funny because when I reflect back on kind of the 4 games that we've had against Milwaukee this season, normally the formula when you play the Bucks is, hey, when Giannis has got it going, you want to play that to a draw, right? Like you want to, hang around, and then when he goes to the bench, you can make a little bit of a run and you can pull away at that time. I think it's fair to say that Giannis is the best player in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah.
When I look kind of at the best players on the best teams throughout the East, or even across the league, that tier 1 group of Jokic, Shea, Giannis, LeBron, Luka, that group, there's really only one of them in the Eastern Conference where just definitively, if you go into a series, that's the number 1 guy. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Jalen Brunson, all those guys, if we're in a series against them, there is a chance that someone on the Cavs is the best player in that series. I think Giannis is one of those guys that he's just going to be that best player no matter what. And for the Cavs to win the Giannis minutes in every single one of these matchups, or at least it feels like that. I know that was the case for the first 2, and then he didn't play the third.
They did. They definitely won the minutes with Giannis in the third matchup where he didn't play.
Yeah, we did terrific there in those minutes. But to outscore the Bucks by 13 in Giannis's minutes again. Like, that's really, really encouraging because he is tough to handle. He's going to get his own. He's going to test your defense. And I don't think every team is built to handle what Giannis is capable of doing offensively. The way that he plays with so much force going to the basket, with such relentlessness, the way that he's able to get his own rebound and second chance opportunities. And the Cavs have bodies to throw at him. Right, like DeAndre Hunter can do a good job. Dean Wade does a good job.
Dean has always done a good job, and I thought he really battled in this game because normally he does a good job of kind of baiting Giannis into his worst habits, and Giannis was not having it. Like, he was going through his chest as much as he could, and you know, when you're Dean Wade and you just don't have the physical advantages there, you just got to hang on for dear life and hope the help comes. I thought he did. He didn't change, you know, again, at the beginning I said he was really steadfast, the game plan from the Cavs. I think that was really emblematic in the way Dean was guarding. You know, he's like, I'm just going to do my best. I'm not going to go crazy. I'm not going to reach. I'm not going to change what I'm doing. I'm just going to trust that eventually it's going to take him one more bump to get through me than he wants, and we're going to be able to bring help, and we're going to get the stops we need.
Yeah. And you know, on the other end, while the Cavs held up well defensively and did a great job on Giannis, the Bucks really struggled with the Cavs, particularly on the perimeter. You know, when you look at this matchup on paper, you would think that is the way that this should go, right? That Damian Lillard is going to be a target on defense, not a target in the way that, you know, Boston will target Darius or Donovan. Will like, hey, we can shoot over these shorter guys. You can get by Dame. He's going to allow very easy penetration. It's not shooting over, you're getting by him. Gary Trent Jr. I thought had a tough game. There were times that he was a little bit pesky and physical, but he's one of those guys that's going to gamble a little bit too much and create opportunities.
Torian Prince at the two it's just not enough foot speed for this Cavs team.
They really are lacking foot speed. And when you look at the shot quality for the Cavs in this game, it was staggering. Like, they got a lot of open threes. Took 23 wide open threes without a defender within 6 feet. They went 10 of 23 on those. So good, but not, you know, great. Not one of their best shooting nights. But then they also went 7 of 20 on kind of those late contest threes where a defender is within 4 to 6 feet. So not wide open, but you're getting a clean look in those spots.
And they felt rhythm. You know, that's where the tracking data can't show you is, are they lightly contested pull-ups or are they lightly contested swing in the rhythm of the game? You know, ball, you know, hitting the shooter's pocket and able to rise up. Like that stuff, I felt like even when Milwaukee was contesting, it was some of those contests where it was like, yeah, but they're probably, you know, they're not really impacting the shot.
Yeah, it's 43 shots that a defender was at least 4 feet away from the 3-point line. Like, that is an incredibly great shot quality. I thought the ball was moving really well. And going back to what you said at the start of the podcast, it really did feel validating. It was a comforting win because they've struggled recently, right? Like, they've had close games against lesser teams. And you're never sure, right? Because there are the ebbs and flows of a season of, are they in a rut and, you know, this is something that they have to work their way out of? Or is this a little bit of human nature of, hey, we're not really playing for anything at this point. We are 8 games up on the Boston Celtics. Well, we're like, what we're really competing against is Cavaliers history. Can we get the win record? Can we get, you know, the number 1 seed in the NBA finals and keep pace with OKC? But, you know, if you're playing a shorthanded Chicago Bulls or the Charlotte Hornets, you're not going to be able to get up for those games in the same way that you would for a matchup against Boston. But you also can't take for granted the fact that, hey, we can just turn this on when we need to, especially with basketball being such a rhythm game. And even though they didn't have their best shooting night, I felt that the intensity was there throughout the entire night. I thought the ball movement was spectacular. I thought it was a really, really fun team effort. And the thing that I really enjoy about it is, you know, the kind of old adage that role players play well at home, they don't necessarily play well on the road. This was one of those games where the Cavs' depth and the role guys really stepped up.
Yeah, I mean, you just look at the bench scoring, you know, Wade has 9, Hunter has a bad game and has 6, Okoro has 5, Ty Jerome chips in 9, Merrill chips in 9, and then you look at the Bucks bench and it's really nothing. Gary Trent Jr. scored 5. Kevin Porter scored 2. And that was really it in the competitive portion of the game. The depth that the Cavs can play is just, so overwhelming. And I think Danny Cunningham said it best on his podcast on Locked On Cavs, where he goes, I felt like this was like closer to a Cavs 30-point win than it was to a Bucks win.
Yeah.
They just looked like they were on a different level, that they could absorb a Giannis A game, because Giannis was also guarding pretty well. It just, they just didn't have the personnel. Like, I think there's, you look at like the Bucks in a matchup against the Celtics or something. I feel like their positional size could help them a little bit. They could be okay, but they just don't got the foot speed for these guards. And the Cavs machine as well. It's not just the guards' speed with the ball. It's them getting into the paint, getting in rotation, and the ball just moves so well for this Cavs team that it's just, you're just so far behind.
Yeah, and I think one of the toughest things for Cavs opponents is, especially when you look at Milwaukee, it's okay. When Dame and Giannis are out there, they have a fighting chance at playing the Cavs to a draw, right? Like they're able to, maybe hang around if Dame gets hot or, gets enough trips to the free throw line, they can maybe play that to a draw. Whereas with the Cavs, it's okay, our starting lineup is very good. Now, Donovan and Mobley are going to the bench. You have to deal with Allen and Garland with a bunch of very productive role players that are going to play well. Then Donovan and Mobley are going to come in refreshed, ready to go. Then we're going to come back and we're going to hit you with that closing lineup, right? Like it reminds me of the Omni-Man meme of look what they have to do to mimic a fraction of our power. You have to have Dame and Giannis out there playing 48 minutes if you want to be as good as we are as a collective. And when you have a night where at least 8 players have 9 points for the Cavs, and your best bench scorer in DeAndre Hunter has a little bit of an off game. But 8 players with at least 9 points, 10 players with at least 15 minutes, 5 guys coming in off the bench kind of in that 15 to 20 minute range. Like that's a lot of depth. That's a lot of production. And it really helps them put their best foot forward. And I think it's going to be an interesting conundrum for Kenny Atkinson of how he's going to pare this down in the playoffs, if at all.
Here's the thing, man. I just think I don't think it's actually that hard, because while the depth of options is great, I still do think the number one strength is at the top in that reliability, in that shell. And then I just think he's going to play who's playing the best. It's just going to be a form thing. On a night where DeAndre Hunter just doesn't have it, he only plays 19 minutes, and that's fine. And Okoro, who I honestly think could have used a lot more run than he got, was going to pick up a lot of those minutes. I just feel like they have so many options, dude. I'm just so grateful for this season, man. They've won 14 games in a row. They lose that game to Boston. They go to 40-10, and they respond by ripping off 14 straight wins, dude. And I just kind of...
Hey, who told you that there was a winning streak around the corner? Your good pal, Justin.
You're never wrong. You're just late, buddy.
I'm just early.
Or early. That's what I meant. Sorry. Never late. Never late. You've never been late on a Cavs optimistic take once. You've never been the last one to the table.
That's concerning. That would be very concerning. People need to do a wellness check on me at that point. But you're right, man. Like the depth is a strength. But to me, like the interesting conundrum is, right now, you're able to go 10, 11 deep and figure out who the hot hand is among the bench, right? In the playoffs, you might not have that option, right? Like you can go up with a really strong 8 or 9, but, you almost have to get some first half run. You might have to go 10 in the first half. And then in the second half, you're like, all right, these are my 8 that I'm playing the last 24 with, right? So you rather than...
Can I and that a little bit? Or you start your series that way. And then by game 5, who can't play, or who isn't fitting, or isn't giving you the run. I just think that's because the series is a small sample, but it's like one of those things where you have to kind of throw out a sample size and just be like, what's working, what's not. And if through 4 games into a series, one lineup is just getting run off the court, I do think you gotta adjust.
I do too. My question for you, and where I'd like some clarification, is do you think, because you said you're going to figure out who can and can't play in a series, do you think there's actually anybody that's currently within the rotation that just like from a matchup standpoint can't play in a particular matchup? Or is it going to be performance based where like, you know, they're in a little in their heads, they're not playing at the level that they can, rather than some deficiency they have within their game?
I don't think that's an important distinction to make when you're coaching in a playoff series.
I think it is.
Hold on.
I think it is because when it's the latter, it's, hey, from the start, we know that this is going to be a bad matchup. Like if George Niang was still on the roster, you would know that, hey, Boston's going to be a tough matchup for him, or OKC is going to be a tough matchup. When you had Channing Frye, you knew, hey, I can't really play him against the Warriors. That's different than, you know, giving Isaac Okoro a run, and if he's turning down shots and he's not playing confidently on the offensive end, hey, it's a little tough for us to get him out there, even though we value what he's doing defensively. I think that distinction does matter.
It matters for team building, but not for Kenny Atkinson. That would be my argument, is whether it's an archetype problem or a confidence problem, eventually you're going to have a guy who's just, it's not their series.
I agree.
But it's I think you need to, in that tight, especially under duress, like if you're in the first round and you're up, 3-1, maybe you don't need to make that change. But if you're like on the ropes, if it's game 5 and it's 2-2, or game 6 and you're down 3-2 or something like that, like that's where it's like, I don't care what it is. We're just not we can't afford to let you work through this right now. Whether it's if you just hit that shot, because here's the thing. Channing had opportunities in those Warriors series. He got chances to play and got run and had shots. And if he had hit those shots, then he would have played more, Like, it was a hard matchup for him, but there were good switchy teams that Channing played well against for us. But, like, Ty Lue didn't have the luxury of being like, well, let's just give it a couple more games. It's like, no, we're losing. We gotta make changes now. And like, I do think the playoffs voice that on you. So that is why I don't think the distinction matters. I think every player on this roster could help in every matchup.
Okay. So we agree there.
To be very clear, but the chance of a team just being like, hey, we're going to blow up every Sam Merrill off-ball action. It's the playoffs, so we're going to beat the crap out of him off-ball, and it's just not, and they're not going to call fouls for Sam or something like that. Like, and if those minutes aren't going well, then I would expect him to go out of the rotation. Same thing with Isaac. Same thing with Dean. I mean, there's levels to this, right? Like the top 5 guys aren't going to get cut out. You're going to go down with the ship with those guys. But like, with your 7, 8, 9, 10 in the rotation, those are those fungible minutes that you might just have to swap out and see what changes under duress.
Okay. I think we're actually on the same page where it's like game 1 and 2.
We always are. It's just
deeper.
the flavor.
Yeah. I think game 1 and 2, first half, you play a deeper rotation, see who has it, see who doesn't, see kind of what feel out the matchup, right? Like those first 2 games of a series are always a little bit of a feeling out process. And then you can make those assessments, right? Like, hey, we probably can't keep playing Ricky Rubio in this series. We have options here, right? And I think if you would have asked me a couple weeks ago, I probably would have sat here being like, I don't know if Sam can play against Boston. I think we have enough depth. I think we can kind of make that assessment going in. But with the way he's been playing, like, especially now that the shot's falling, like, he's doing the main thing. He's been holding up defensively. I thought, when he got put on Dame a couple times last night, I was like, that's a little too much dip on that
he
chip.
Killed Milwaukee on the other end of the floor. So,
He did. But you don't have to put him on Dame, right? Like you can put him on someone else. But my point is, I think he's done a good enough job as an all-around player to merit, that opportunity to see what he's got. So I do agree. I think as the series progresses, you're going to become more selective with your lineups. You're going to see which ones end up working. But to start the series, I think you almost have to go 10, at least in the first half. And then in the second half, it's all right. This is our 8 that we're running with in the second half. We're going to, we're going to give, what the advantage of that is too, is you're giving your core guys and your starters a little bit more rest in the first half so that they can go harder in the second half, so that they can close games. You're not playing back-to-backs in the playoffs. You're not playing 3 and 4 nights with travel. You have the opportunity to do that. So I think going a little deeper, not only to assess what lineups are working and what kind of looks that you feel good about relative to the opponent that's putting them in the tough spot, you have that ability to then play your guys a little tougher in the second half when you want to close out those games.
And I do think that does reflect a sea change, at least for me, in terms of what I would do if I were Kenny. Because if I'm being honest with myself, I was looking forward towards the playoffs, and I was thinking it's going to annoy me if Kenny tries to run 10 guys.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I was expecting him to, and I wasn't going to be excited about it. I was going to be like, I'd just rather you pick the 9 and, and really pare it down. Again, we won a title with Ty Lue. So like there's some muscle memory here of, paring down and being cool with that.
Yeah.
But I think that's the change is I now am of the opinion that playing those 10, at least in the first half, is so representative of what the team's culture is,
mm-hmm.
and of how they play and how Kenny figures out who to play over the rest of the game, that I'm now going in aligned with that idea that he'll play 10. Now he might surprise us and play 9. I mean, we don't know. We're doing we're guessing and we're doing prognostication. But again, I went in expecting to be like, I wish he wouldn't. And now I'm like, yeah, it's cool if he does.
Yeah. And I think a big part of that is now we have an extended track record of all these guys coming in off the bench and providing something.
Yeah, right? Everyone's won us a game.
They've all bring something different to the table, right? I think that's a big part of this. It's not like there's big redundancies between what a lot of them are bringing, right? Like they all bring a different flavor. They're bringing a track record of success within the season, and when you have that track record of success, you feel more comfortable with it. Just like I feel more comfortable with Zoom AI Companion, because only you can do your best work, Carter. Zoom AI Companion can help you do the rest, like automatically taking notes, answering meeting questions, and helping you respond to your coworker. Available at no additional cost with eligible paid plans. Work happy with Zoom AI Companion.
Man, what a year! What a year! I know. I'm sure everyone's.
They got to win one more
it.
game. They got to win one more game to match your prediction for this season. They got to win 2 more for them to match mine. I think they're hitting those marks.
Yeah, and normally picking a win total like 7 higher than the Vegas line is like, all right, Homer. Like,
that Vegas line was nonsense, though. Even the national guys are like, I don't know about the Cavs, but that line looks stupid. Like, it was awful. You made the best point. Everything went wrong last year, and they exceeded that total. There was no reason to. I think people got maybe a little too worked up over the changes some other teams in the Eastern Conference made, right? Like, we always sit here in the offseason being like, oh, man, Tyus Jones going to the Phoenix Suns, they're going to win 70. But then, the offseason moves end up not mattering as much as they do in that transaction cycle. And, I think maybe the Cavs standing pat let this some doubt there, but they have far exceeded those expectations. And, that I think that ties into the depth. Like, looking at last night, it was really, really cool to see. So 3 lineups played at least 8 minutes last night. The starting lineup basically played Milwaukee to a draw, 24-26. They just got outscored by 2 in 10 minutes. You had the Jerome, Mitchell, Merrill, Hunter, and Mobley lineup that played 8 minutes. That played Milwaukee to a draw, 22-22. And then you had the lineup that was the most productive last night, Garland, Okoro, Strus, Wade, and Allen, which in 8 minutes outscored Milwaukee by 11, 25-14. that really was the biggest kind of differential on the night. And
you know what's so cool
goes,
about the Garland, Okoro, Strus, Wade, Allen lineup to me was like there's so many OGs in there.
Yeah, there is.
Like that felt like I don't know. It's funny. I think it was Chris Fedor or maybe it was Joe Varden on The Athletic. They talked about like what a wacky lineup that was, and I was like, that was what they ran. That was their team like 2 years ago for a lot of minutes. So it was just like kind of funny to see them, and like those are guys who have just been on this team. Strus obviously in year 2, but Garland
feels like an old pal.
I know, but Garland's year 5, Okoro's 4. No, or maybe Garland's 6. I don't remember. Either way, those guys have just been here since this. A lot of those guys got here when this team wasn't good yet, and it's really cool to see them out there. Like it almost felt like kind of like a comfort thing. Like I was watching an old movie I've seen 100 times, and watching.
Kevin Porter Jr. was on the floor for the Bucks last night, and 3-4 of those guys were on the same team as him at one point.
So it
four guys.
It felt like cuddling up to watch your favorite movie you've seen 100 times, which is why it's funny that you saw a few people talk about that lineup won. I'm like those guys together have won the Cavs a lot of games and are really crucial in this renaissance. And they're not getting to this level without those, especially those 4 guys. I mean, obviously Strus has been amazing, just hasn't been here quite as long. And those minutes just felt really, really fun. And I mean, how many times were we like, if only we can get Okoro and Wade on the floor with one of the bigs, no one's going to score on us, because we've just wanted them all to be healthy and in form at the same time. And kind of feels like we're getting that right now.
Yeah, and that is a really good defensive lineup, right? Like DJ's been working his butt off defensively. I thought he had a great defensive game against Milwaukee. Really felt his presence there. Of course, what Okoro does kind of goes without speaking. Max, I'm on record. He's one of my favorite role players, maybe my favorite role player that I've had watching the Cavs. I just love his energy and what he brings to the table. He was great. Wade's terrific against Giannis, and Jarrett, obviously, we know what he does on the defensive end. So it's no surprise that lineup really stepped up. And, Okoro in particular, what he's done to Damian Lillard, he's guarded Dame more than any other player the last 2 years. He spent over 40 minutes guarding Dame the last 2 seasons. And in that time, Dame is 7 of 21 from the field. And while that percentage, we're talking about a small sample size here, 21 shots, the percentage is terrific. That that indicates he's playing really good defense. I think the more significant thing is 21 shots in 40 minutes for a very high volume player that's able to get his shot off against a lot of guys. That goes to Okoro's ability to suppress shots, to make guys uncomfortable, to get him out of his spots. He does a terrific job on Damian Lillard, and I'd be very embarrassed if I was a podcaster that recently said Cavs have no one that can guard Dame.
I would be too, and thank God that wouldn't be our podcast. I think,
particular if that same podcaster recently or after the OKC loss said that our Linsanity run is over. that would be really embarrassing, as the Cavs are on the verge of another 15-game winning streak.
Certainly, again, could not be this podcast. I just think Okoro is one of those guys that you're really glad that the Cavs have hung on to, because and one of the reasons why I think both of us were angsty about losing him in the offseason or doing a sign and trade even for a good player back, as his name has bounced around the transactional circles, is he does do a thing that no one else in the team does as well as him. Yeah, I would rather have him on Dame Lillard than anyone else in this roster. Mobley's a better defender overall, obviously. I would probably put Allen above Okoro as well. But for this one chore, this one task, it's
putting
nice.
Him on a 6'6" guard.
Yeah, it's so nice, and I feel like in a Knicks series it'll matter. In a Bucks series it'll matter. I don't know if Boston is the perfect series for ice.
That's the funny thing, because Drew Holiday and Derek White, is a Cavs killer, but
not in the way that ice
Right. It's not, solo isolation. Let's put him on and try to, shut off the flow of the offense. Usually, like Derek White is almost a barometer of how, when their offense is rolling, the ball is swinging, getting to Derek White, and he's hitting kind of those knockout punches rather than, hey, he's going to be the guy that's running the offense. No, their offense runs through. All right, let's find a mismatch and play isolation basketball.
Yeah, and that's where it just, unless you just don't give up the switch, which by the way, Okoro was part of them not doing that against Boston. So I'm not saying it's not a good matchup, but the Knicks and the Bucks specifically are just like the perfect. Even if he's not starting, you can just kind of muck up their rhythm for a bit, and maybe turn a game in a 5-minute stretch. So I feel like Ice is really, really in good form. And I don't know if I've hit on this on the pod. I can't remember, honestly. So you'll just have to hold me accountable here. Yeah. But I feel like I have to hold an L a little bit with Ice because we talked about it on the pod in the summer. We talked about it last year where, we've kind of always been at odds on this, where you've always said, hey, man, like parking him in the corner isn't going to get what you need out of him structurally. And I always said, well, he's got to do more with the times he does get the ball if he wants to get the ball more and get to do more. Like, because involving a player in an action is an inherently costly thing. It's a resource thing. If Isaac is the one setting the screen, then Evan or Jared is not the one setting the screen, So that was kind of my party line, was like, hey, Isaac, I love Isaac. He's a great player. He's hit the jumpers, come along, all that stuff. I want to see him earn all the touches and more activity in the offense, because the way the Cavs were playing last year, you need someone in that corner.
Yeah.
And I think I just have to hold the L because Kenny has gotten Isaac a lot more involved. I mean, he has been so good on the short roll all year. He's been a very good off-ball screener, really making good contact, dragging that foot in just the sneaky little way so you don't get called, to get a little bit more of a chip on the guy trying to recover. I just think he's been a much more complete player. And to your point that you've made a billion times, you're just not as reliant on the three to go in for him to have a good game now.
Yeah. When you're sitting there and it's, hey, you're going to get 3 shots from the corner all game, and your offensive output is going to be reliant on how you do on those. Like, that's such a low volume. Darius and Donovan will go 0 for 3 at times, right? Like, and the larger sample is he's been shooting well, but I like seeing him used in more ways. And I think, we should probably acknowledge that there was a foundation for this late in the past too, right? Like, this is something that we would occasionally see. I remember the game against Miami last year where Okoro as the roll man was instrumental late in the fourth quarter of getting great looks and getting those wins. But I think kind of the crisis situation that they were in from a health perspective last year, it was tougher to, let's explore some things with Okoro. Let's let him, stretch his wings here. Let's, experiment with other guys on the roster. The focus was, let's get Darius back on the right track. Evan's coming in back off a knee surgery. Let's try to get him reintegrated. We went 18-2 and now we're missing Donovan for the rest of the regular season. Like, there is always some sort of issue going on and made it tougher. And I think one of the other things that's made this easier for Okoro coming back is, since he's come back from the injury, now DeAndre Hunter's on the roster. That means he's able to play almost exclusively as a shooting guard. And I think that guard-to-guard screening and the ways that Kenny's using him are so much easier as a shooting guard. That was the spot that, Bruce Brown really excelled as. I'm basically like functioning sometimes as a power forward at the shooting guard position. And he has more gravity as a result of that. I saw the openness ratings for 3-point shooters so far this season. Dean Wade actually has a higher openness rating than Isaac Okoro.
Oh, that's a great stat. That's a great pull, brother.
And I think a large part of that, him shooting better is part of it. But I think part of it is when you're playing as a shooting guard, the defender has to stay connected. You're not going to sag off as a shooting guard defender and, oh, I'm going to fill the paint. I'm filling the paint here on the weak side. No, what are you doing? You're not bringing anything to the table there. As a small forward or even a power forward, you're able to kind of change defensively. And let's put Al Horford on Isaac Okoro in the corner because he can sag off into the paint. You're not able to do that at the shooting guard position. And I just feel like he is playing since he's come back with the injury. He's hit the ground running. He is attacking the glass. He's getting rebounds. He's doing the active stuff. It's both what I wanted to see, and it's also producing the kind of supplemental production that you really wanted to see to continue justify giving him those minutes.
Yeah, for sure. And Brandon in the YouTube chat just made a little extra comment that, Okoro in action does make the Dames and the Brunsons and the Trae Youngs of the world have to guard for 24 seconds.
Yep.
It does. There's just all these knock-on effects that make his life a little bit easier. And, and that is the one thing I will press on Kenny a little bit is I don't think against Milwaukee, Okoro should be playing basically 12 competitive minutes. I think that's a 20-minute a game matchup. And I would take minutes from the DeAndre Hunters, the Dean Wades, the Sam Merrills of the world to find ice those minutes because I think he is so singularly impactful against the most volatile element of the Bucks attack.
Yeah, I agree. And, credit to Chris Fedor's Wine and Gold Talk podcast, but he was mentioning a couple games ago where Kenny was saying he was basically looking down at the stat sheet and said, man, I got to find ways to get Isaac more minutes and basically saying, hey, we close with DeAndre here, but I just as easily could have had Isaac in that role, right? Like what he brings to the table defensively. And, I do think there's differences in terms of their length. But that's one of those tricky conundrums because I typically would agree with you, but I think one of the kind of trickle down effects that we're dealing with right now, when you're looking at it from a rotation standpoint, is if this was a month or two ago where Merrill's playing good defensively, but the shot's not falling, okay, that's an easier kind of transition to make. Now that the shot's falling and he's playing well balanced basketball, when you have a team this deep, it needs to be merit based. And I think that Kenny is doing the right things here. And I understand how
Sam
difficult
is shooting the crap out of the ball. I didn't realize how good it's been. 3 of 7, 3 of 5, 1 of 2, 4 of 4, 3 of 5 in the month of March.
And you're not losing anything with him on the court, right? Like he stands up defensively. His screen navigation, his footwork is terrific there. Basically, the only spot when you look at Basketball Index is a great resource for this kind of thing where it breaks down the different defenses. The only spot where he's going to have issues is in isolation. I think they rate him at grade him at a C- there. But every other spot, he's doing his part. He's playing good team defense. So I think it's great that Isaac is playing so well and we're having these conversations because the other thing that we've talked about, just reflecting on, years of Isaac Okoro conversations is, hey, when he starts off the year and he's in a reduced role, you don't feel his impact. You don't notice him out there. And it's great that when he steps in as a starter, he plays really, really well. But can we get this in a reduced role? Can he play an impactful 15 to 18 minutes? And I think what we're seeing is he came back from the injury and immediately was doing that. Yeah, that to me speaks to a confidence in his role, and I think credit needs to go to the coaching staff of really defining exactly what they want from him when he's out there on the court.
Very, very fair, Justin. We got to talk about Max. It's a disservice that we took this long to get to Max, who killed Milwaukee in this game. Absolutely killed them. He was moving. He was really attacking the boards. He had 4 offensive rebounds, 17 and 9. Everything about his game last night was reflective of what I love about him as a role player. He read space. He had only 2 assists. He had a few unbelievable reads that did not lead to buckets. I think he is, that starting group has come under fire the last week or so, just because they haven't been starting particularly well. Even either half, really. The lineup hasn't been playing that well, if we're really being honest with ourselves. Max has been playing very good basketball. And I just, even in that Orlando series last year where he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, no one could. But I loved his minutes then too. I just think he is a winning player. And all the things I loved about him as a free agent signing, I still love. I just think he adds an edge to this team. He adds a professionalism to this team. I think he is part of the whirling dervish of movement that they can kind of provide and put teams in that blender. I am so appreciative of his place on this roster. And I feel like with all the fun of the core four, and then the Ty Jerome renaissance and the DeAndre Hunter midseason acquisition, I feel like sometimes he is kind of the under-discussed player on this roster.
Yeah.
I feel like he has just been the metronome, man. He is so reliable to play good basketball every night. Now, sometimes the jumper goes in at a really high level, sometimes it doesn't, but it doesn't impact the way he plays generally. And I'm just very appreciative of him.
Yeah, he plays very intelligent basketball. And I think, I joked about this with you last night where I said, I just don't understand how the fan base that came to love and adore J.R. Smith can't, sometimes embrace a streak shooter that does a lot of other things really well, right? Like JR's passing and his defense, was great. Like I think he was a very underrated defender in his time with the Cavs. I think he's a better defender than Max. I think he was a more dynamic shooter, but Max brings a lot of that same stuff to the table, and I think his chemistry, his ability to reliably run a two-man game with Allen and Mobley is a huge asset. And when you play a team like Milwaukee, man, I don't want to be disrespectful saying this, but when you are a team that sometimes gets disorganized defensively, that's the exact type of team that Max Strus can kill, because he is so intelligent in finding those passing lanes, finding those pockets off ball to get those shots up. Those curl around jumpers from the corner were absolutely absurd. And, there's a reason why when you dive into the kind of advanced analytics on his shot profile, he always rates out as a better shooter than his percentages because of his shot difficulty. I think that's something that you have to take into consideration. I would also say at the same time, sometimes that shot difficulty is based on his choices as a shooter. It's not always, hey, he's being clamped down. Sometimes he's going to take some ridiculous threes, but I think you need a guy like that. And I think now that, we have DeAndre Hunter in the mix, now that Dean Wade is back and playing well, you have Sam Merrill, you have Isaac Okoro, all these other guys that are bringing other things to the table. Being a little less reliant on Max and having alternatives on those evenings where it's not working, just like it almost frees me up to enjoy it even more, because I really do think what he brings to the table is valuable and it's going to matter in the playoffs.
Yeah, I just think he's a guy I would go to war with 10 times out of 10. And I pulled up his basketball reference because I was like, I wonder how the numbers are actually looking, because I haven't just looked in a while.
I actually haven't looked. Can I guess what his 3-point percentage is at?
Go ahead. He shot 35 last year.
Is he at 38 this year?
He is at 38.1.
Woo!
I'm sorry, 38.3. And he's upped his 3-point volume by about 1 3-point attempt per 36. He's shooting a little bit better from the field, three percentage points better from three. The free throw rate is down, which makes sense. But here's a little factoid, because remember last year we were so excited about his playmaking, the fact that he was averaging just under 5 assists per 36, and we were like, man, we didn't know he could do that. But we were kind of like, he's having to play a lot of ball handling minutes because because Darius and Donovan were hurt so much of the year. They didn't have Ty Jerome. Like, he had to run a lot of offense. So it was one of those things where we were glad the assist numbers were up, but we're like, maybe that's reflective of the roster situation more than anything.
Yeah.
His assists per 36 have stayed almost even. He was at
Really?
4.6 last year. He's at 4.4 this year.
And this is a much, much, much smaller example, but considering we have another game coming up against them recently and we played them, it's the example's fresh in my mind. But last year when Memphis had all those injuries, they let Jaren Jackson explore the space, and it really paid dividends when they got healthy. I think that's reflected in Max's playmaking, right? And he's not being forced into those spots he was last year when he had to play so much point guard. But the reads he makes, I feel like all kind of the advancements he made in that category last year are still there this year. I'm surprised that the number's so high, just because
all these playmaking reps for Jerome and Mobley and all that stuff. I would have assumed it was cut in half just by circumstance.
Mobley is taking on such a larger part of that than he did last year. Darius has been phenomenal. Donovan is, I think he's taken a step up. We've talked about this
literally didn't exist last year.
Yeah, right. Like I'm shocked that is in fact the case. But yeah, I think that's a great poll. I think that's a great example of him just being kind of that connective player. And one thing that I want to point out, because on the last podcast I mentioned how DeAndre hadn't played any minutes with the core since his first game with the Cavs. The last two games, Kenny has got him second half minutes with the core four, so that's at least encouraging. I'd like to continue to see that, but this current kind of balance is working pretty well. DeAndre has been terrific as they stagger. If I look at the cleaning the glass numbers, Carter, you're going to laugh at this. This is how reliable Kenny is when it comes to rotations. But we know that Garland and Allen is the main pairing. So far with DeAndre Hunter, they played 159 possessions. Mitchell, Mobley, and Hunter, without Garland and Allen, have played 163 possessions. It's almost down
clockwork, baby.
And you look at the
you
Garland.
Think he's got a guy in the staff that's just his rotations guy?
Oh, someone's definitely doing it.
Because there's no way he's remembering this while he's coaching the game.
No. There's got to be some assistance. But to give the numbers for those lineups, Garland, Allen, and Hunter plus 22 net rating. Mitchell, Mobley, and Hunter plus 20 net rating.
Yep.
That rocks.
They are very good in every way. And,
I think you're correct in pointing out that the starting lineup has not been good recently. I think a lot of that has been effort-based. Like, they have not seemed as locked in. The other part is, the guards are going through a bit of a slump. Darius had a couple games where it looked like, was coming back. I thought Miami was pretty good. Charlotte, even though he went 4 of 10, it's still 20 points on 10 shots because he got a lot of free throws there. But you look at the last 4 games, man, Darius is 20 of 57 from the field and 12 of 34 from 3. And Donovan is 25 of 68 from the field and 6 of 30 from 3. That lineup's not going to be as good if the guards aren't shooting well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think they're slumping just a little bit, but not in a way that is like, horrible.
Yeah.
I have a little factoid for you, Justin.
Go for it.
Who do you think leads the NBA in plus minus in the last 10 games?
DeAndre Hunter.
Sure does.
Yeah.
And isn't that fun that they just, again, they have all these options, first off, which is just wonderful. But isn't it fun that a guy who has been criticized for being a pretty good stats, but the impact's not there. You just drop him into this new environment, and immediately he becomes one of the best on-off guys in the NBA.
It is fun. It's fun. And honestly, I like that trade is kind of working out to be a win-win because Atlanta really needed the playmaking.
They needed warm bodies. They got 3 playable players at the deadline.
Yeah,
and that helps.
And George had been playing great this year. Karras has been playing really, really well up until when he had that hand injury. So for those two guys to be playing really well and giving Atlanta what they need, that's terrific. DeAndre's been giving the Cavs exactly what they need. And as we said at the time of the trade, I was excited to see the trickle-down effects. I was excited to see more Okoro at shooting guard. I was excited to see, having that alternative to Dean Wade. Like it just feels like it's been such a balanced roster, and it's no surprise that DeAndre has had that kind of an impact. And I think just reflecting on the last couple of years here, if Darius and Donovan were having a stretch like that, things wouldn't be going well. Even in 22-23, I remember there was the January where neither of them was shooting particularly well. I think the flu was running through the team, and they went 500 for that month. Now you can kind of have this, a stretch like this where the shots aren't falling, but I feel like both of them are still playing pretty good basketball.
I was just thinking a 500 month would probably give you as many losses as we have this season.
Pretty much. But when it comes to Darius and Donovan, even when they're not shooting well, I still want to see those 13, 15 attempts, right?
Yeah.
Like, don't press beyond that, but you're good enough shooters. Keep taking the right shots. I thought the only game where Darius was like jacking up shots and it felt bad was Chicago. Outside of that, I feel like he's taking the right kinds of shots, right? And Miami and Charlotte, I was very good with his games. Donovan, even though he's not shooting well these last 4 games, he's upped his playmaking. He's generating opportunities for guys. He's getting generating 10 assist opportunities per game over that stretch. Darius, 13. That's what you want to see. They're both playing hard on the defensive end. They're chipping in on the glass. It just feels like, you're able to weather that storm a little bit more. And for you to play a game against the Bucks where you generate good looks, your guards don't shoot particularly well, the big time scorer that you brought in DeAndre Hunter doesn't have a good shooting game, and you still comfortably win against a Bucks team that's had won 9 of its last 11 games. That's a pretty damn good feeling.
It absolutely is, buddy. And so is 14 in a row. And I got to ask you, I know we're getting probably near closing time here, but when does the streak end, dude? Because you go this week, it's home versus Brooklyn. Then on Friday at Memphis, Sunday, ABC afternoon game against Orlando. Do they lose this week or do they go up to 17?
I'm going to predict, this is a fun game, predict when the Cavs are going to lose.
It's hard.
Here's the one. Wednesday the 19th at the Kings.
That's a good one.
I feel like we always have a funky game there. That's the 3rd game in 4 nights.
In a back-to-back.
Still close enough to daylight saving time, which just sucks. I'm going through hell right now.
You don't have children. I don't want to talk to you. You're not allowed to talk to me about this.
Yeah, I'm tired.
Oh, you're tired.
Yeah. But 3 and 4, you travel to LA, then you travel up to Sacramento to play that back-to-back. I can see it happening there. But if that is the case, and if I am right, as I so often am, that's a franchise record winning streak. That's a lot of fun. Yeah,
I mean, they only got to win 2 more to set a new franchise record. So I got to say, I think that's a great poll. I think it's probably the right poll. An important thing to say, for the entirety of March, the Cavs do not play the same, stay in the, they don't have consecutive home games the entire month. So they never are going to play in the same place 2 games in a row. And they're pretty much on the road in perpetuity for the entire month. So this will be a big, weight of travel month, especially when
this is a big schedule challenge month.
Yeah.
After Brooklyn, they have 2 days off. They don't have 2 days off the rest of the month. They are playing every other day, and they are flying between every single one of those games.
So I'm going to go ahead, and I'm actually going to say, I think they're due for a national TV stinker, and I'm going to pick Sunday against Orlando. It's a matinee afternoon game against a team they're pretty sure they got. They just beat them by 40. That's always a hard game because they're embarrassed and they want to come for your throat, but you're like, we got these suckers. It's just got like a cocktail, plus like that Friday Memphis game I think is going to be tough. And I don't know. If I had to pick, it'll be that one, but I think your pick's probably better than mine, to be honest.
Okay. Well, mine's a
Wouldn't
little
it be
more
fun to see him
optimistic,
get to 20, though? I want him to get to 20.
I mean, I'm staying on brand.
That's the thing that's really good, by the way, about all this is that even though this month sucks, they do have the streak to kind of motivate them.
They do, yeah.
Like, because if they weren't streaking, I think they would definitely lose one of these games. Just because, eventually you lose. And instead they're going to be like, I don't want to lose the streak to Sacramento on a late at night on a Wednesday. No, thank you.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We'll see. What if they just win out? Can't rule anything out anymore with these dudes.
The fun thing is, man, like 70 is still kind of possible. If they only lose.
It's more than kind of. They're on pace for 69.
Nice. The number that I really just wanted to see is 67 because I want to get that franchise win record. So if you drop a couple, that's fine. But that's looking more and more feasible, man. Like this month is going to be tricky. I think they're really going to be battling the schedule. But this is one of those spots where, hey, really benefit from the depth. The last topic I had, I think this is going to be a shorter one, so I'm okay doing this, even though we've kind of gone long today. I wanted to ask you, if you could pick who you'd rather play, not who you think is the better matchup for the Cavs, you as an emotional fan, who would you rather play in the second round? The New York Knicks or the Milwaukee Bucks? This is less of a realistic hypothetical because the Bucks just lost 2 games and kind of lost some momentum there. But with Brunson, missing some time here and the Bucks being hot, it's at least a possibility that those two flop in the standings. Who would you rather play in the second round?
Luckily, I don't have to worry about it, both narratively and basketball. I would like to beat the New York Knicks. I don't like that they embarrassed us 2 years ago. I think the only way to really wash the stench out of an ass kicking is to go get them back. Mm-hmm. And I think this team is so well built to get that Knicks team back. And I don't think they're meaningfully more talented than the Bucks.
No, like I think I kind of trust the Bucks more. Like, yeah, the other advantage of playing the Knicks is I don't think Boston's as well suited to defend Giannis as we are. Jason Tatum taking those body blows for an entire series.
Yeah, I would rather
play them after. Here's the thing:
would the Celtics sweep the Knicks? I think they would.
Yeah, I think they would. Maybe if the Knicks get hot, I think the Cavs and Celtics would both either sweep the Knicks or be a 5-game series if the Knicks get hot for a particular game. So I would like that from a narrative standpoint, but I also kind of I'm weighing, going into last night's game, I wanted Milwaukee to go above them, go above the Knicks because playing Giannis, playing the best player in the conference, that's always scary going into a playoff series.
But it'd be really validating if you win. That's
the thing. That is such a good feather in the cap that, and I feel comfortable that we would win that series. I don't think that they can guard us on the perimeter. I think we're well suited to guard Giannis. And all due respect to Kyle Kuzma, him being there instead of Chris Middleton does not make me fear them more.
No.
So
I think he helps them in a lot of ways, but not against the Cavs.
Not against Cavs. That's exactly right. So I think if I stop caring so much about what national podcasts are saying, bringing up the New York Knicks, I think in my heart of hearts, I'd say Milwaukee.
Oh, I don't care what national podcasters say. I want them to hurt. Yeah, I want to see Knicks Muse crying on Twitter.
If I'm honest with myself and I'm honest about what a petty individual I am, I think the answer is the New York Knicks.
Oh, it's gotta be, dude. I want Jared Allen to go into the Garden and a closeout game 4 and tell him the lights are perfectly bright. I want everything.
He's got to wear some sunglasses or something to the closeout game. That'd be great. Oh, man. How about you guys? Listeners, drop it in the comments. Who would you rather play in the second round, Knicks or Bucks? A little interaction there. Big thanks to all you guys tuning in and hanging out on YouTube. We appreciate you guys. Make sure you like and subscribe. Click that notification bell so you know when we're going live. If you're listening via podcast and you want to support us, leave us a rating, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of Chase Down's exclusive Discord chat, send a screenshot of their review to chasedownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there. Until next time, go Cavs.